Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Don Peterson. The video you're about to see is actually an excerpt from Miyagi for Golf, which is my online training course. So if you like the video, at the end I'll give you a link to Miyagi for Golf, my online training course. And please like and subscribe. Look forward to seeing you back here and helping you with your golf game. Okay, so I want to do a deep dive into hip action. And I've seen a lot of videos. There's hundreds of videos out there now about how to use the hips properly during the swing, how to create more power, how to use the ground. So let's go over what I think are three different styles of how to use your hips. All right, so I'm going to look at Arnold Palmer, maybe like Bryson DeChambeau right now, because those guys are predominantly shoulder swingers. I think if you go back and look at Arnold, Arnold used a lot of shoulders in his swing. So he pivoted back around almost like a perfect spine angle. His head didn't move very much, and his hips also didn't move very much. They kind of rotated around his spine because, again, he was predominantly using his shoulders for the power. So if you look at someone who brings the club back down with their shoulders rotating around, that hip is not going to slide forward. It's basically going to rotate right in place. So if you look at Bryson DeChambeau, he kind of does the same type of action. He doesn't have a lot of hip slide. So instead, he rotates, and his hip actually almost looks like it goes backwards. And actually, he advocates, like pulling that foot back so he can get more speed of the club head at the bottom of his swing arc. Again, I think what we need to understand when you're talking about what the hips are doing, a lot of times your hip action is a response to where the club is at the top of the swing. So again, if you're looking at Bryson DeChambeau and Arnold Palmer, they had kind of a shut position. They swung using their shoulders more predominantly than their lower body, the ground, and the hips. So their hips were more responsive and more rotary rather than having any lateral or up or down motion like some of the other videos are talking about. Now let's move into why some of these hip action I see is some of these teachers advocating, this downward pressure where you want to get your right hip high during your trail hip high during the backswing so that you can really stomp into that lead foot and get pressure going down into the ground. Because once you get down, now you can go up very quickly, and that upward motion is where the club head speed comes from. So again, I think this is as a result of players who have quite a bit of lift in their backswing. Well, what happens is when you have lift, you have to have pull down. And when you're lifting the club up, you're going to go down. This downward motion helps you bring the club back down. And then when you have your arms pulling down towards the ground, there's going to have to be an upward motion so that you don't just pull the club and hit the ground. You actually have to come back up and let that club release through the ball. Now, when you see that type of hip action and you're going down and up, there's not a lot of rotary as you go through. So if you looked, I put this little orange rubber band here by my hip with a lot of this type of hip action where your arms are up high and you're pulling down. Now you're going to have this downward action and an upward action, and there's not as much rotary. And what happens is then your arms go right past and close the club face and get that snap or whip action that they're talking about. Now, the last hip action, more the throwing hip action, where you're kind of looking at bumping the hips laterally and then rotating. You can notice here now this orange band, it doesn't stay visible because I'm, on the downward and upward motion where I'm going down and then up. See the rubber band is still here. But if I hit laterally, if I hit the lead hip and then rotate around, you can see there's a different action. If you look at that rubber band, this is down and up versus to the left and then around. So the hip is going to rotate back around. So in my mind, the most efficient hip action will be the throwing motion where you wind up, you go lateral for a minute, and then you rotate back around and your hips actually rotate through the shot and you face the target. This is the most common hip action that was taught all classic swing and things like that. And, years ago, there was the reverse C. So there was some of that going on years ago, but most of the tour players got away from that type of a sliding action and got into the bump and then rotate left. Now, if your arms and hands are kept in front of your body, I feel like you can make a lateral motion and then rotate your lead hip around and create more club head speed that way than you can if you're pulling down and standing up. All right, that's just my personal opinion. But again, it goes back to, are you lifting your arms? Are you getting your arms very vertical and high during your backswing? Or are you keeping your arms and your elbows more in front of your chest, like Butch Harmon promoted for many years? My personal feeling, I like to try to keep my amateur golfers pretty in check. I don't want a lot of lift, because then you have to have timing in your golf swing. You have to have this hip action that's really kind of a little unnatural, I think. And you lose the posting up on the lead leg, which I like rotating through and just posting up over here on the lead side. I don't like to see jumping. Again, when you have this this action where you're really working on going down into the ground and then back up, what happens is you see a lot of jumping, twisting of the ankles. You guys have all seen this, and that, again, in my opinion, is caused by people who have their arms pretty vertical. So then they have to do this pulling down, and because they're pulling down so hard, they have to jump back up to go through the ball. Rather than do that, I kind of like the idea of keeping the arms less vertical, more across the chest. Now when you go through, everything is in sync with your hips. Your arms and the club can go right on through the golf ball, and you can finish up posted up with your hips completely rotated, not partially rotated and then standing up. One other quick note. One of the things that we were talking about was, your hips are kind of responsive, and you have to do certain things based on where you put the club and your arms at the top of the swing. So, like I said, those people who want to lift their arms and get a little bit of what we call arm runoff, what happens is now the arms get behind you, so that if you did turn your hips, you can see the arms get stuck behind you. So what happens is, instead of turning the hips or sliding and rotating the hips, what happens is we're going down in this pulling down motion, and there's less rotation of the hips because you're going down and up. Now your arms have a chance to get back in front of you. And so you're going down and then up, and your arms can come right back in front and hit the golf ball fairly cleanly and solidly. And obviously there's some great players on tour that do this. On the other hand, if you keep your arms in front of you and you make a shoulder turn, now if you bump your hips and then rotate your hips, your arms can stay in front and you can still get back to a good impact position because you never let your arms get behind you in the first place. So those are some key things. Like I said, a lot of times, and I know people work on their downswing with their hips, but they're not thinking about their backswing. We all have our own backswing, and if you just stick with whatever backswing you have, your hips are going to have to kind of respond to that backswing position that you've put yourself in. So keep that in mind. If you're trying some of these different hip moves and they're not working for you, it could be because you've got the club in a different position at the top, doesn't match the type of hip action that you're working on. And again, if you want to have rotary hips and you want to move through the ball with a little bit of lateral, like a throwing motion, a common throwing motion is step and then rotate. Okay, so the common hip action for me, most efficient action, would be to have a little bit of lateral bump and then rotate the hips from there. I think an unnatural motion is more down and up. That doesn't make, and then obviously if you're swinging with your shoulders instead of using your ground, I didn't mention this before, but guys like Arnold Palmer, Bryson DeChambeau are big, strong people. So they can make a swing like that and produce plenty of club head speed and plenty of power. I'm not sure that swinging from the top down or swinging from the shoulders as your primary force in your golf swing is going to be the best way for maybe someone smaller, a woman or a child or something like that. So again, you see use of the body and use of the ground as these are ways to make that golf club swing with more speed and more power. So let's try to match up what we're doing on our backswing with what we're doing with our hips, and I think you'll do a lot better. Okay, one last thought about hip action and club head speed. I'm going to throw this out at you. This is something that I recognize in my golf swing. And I've always been kind of powerful for my size, and I could hit the ball a long ways when I was swinging well. You never swing it, you never hit the ball very far when you're swinging poorly. But one of the things I always felt like the club head was flying outward as my hip was snapping backwards. So if you think about that as a whip action, a lot of times people refer to the golf swing as you're cracking the whip. So I have a whip here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to emulate what I hear some teachers say, in that this downward and then upward, and then your hips pretty much stop and your arms and hands just kind of fly by. And they talk about how something's stopping, your hands slowing down causes the club head to go past very fast. Well, another analogy, just so you know, is people who run and then you stick your foot out and you stop their feet, and they fly forward really fast. So obviously something stopping and everything rushing by sounds like a clubhead speed, a lot of clubhead speed. But I'm going to take this whip. Okay, so I'm going to throw it out and just stop. And there's not as much clubhead speed, and there's not much snap of the whip. If I just throw it out and stop, it almost just like comes to a halt. But if I bring the hand out and then I bring it back, now you can see there's a nice snap there. I almost got myself in the face. But there's a whip action. There's a lot more speed, and there's an actual snap of the whip. So what I'm saying is that if I go out and then come back, that's a snap. If I go out and just stop, there's no snap. It's almost like you're just letting the whip just come out to a dead end stop. So the same thing would be true with the hips, and that's why I was looking at this rubber band. If my hip goes forward and then goes backwards, and that's kind of what happens. And I'm gonna show you here for a second. I'm gonna put this out here. If my left hip or lead hip goes forward and then goes backwards, and that's what I see as happening in really good golf swings. Ben Hogan's swing, if you look at it, the hips going forward, but then it doesn't just stop there and the hands rush by. His hip continues going backwards around behind him. Well, that club head flying out towards the ball there's more cracking the whip in that type of hip action than there would be in this down up. Personal opinion. Throw it out there, let you guys see what you think. And I know I'm going to get some great comments, so I look forward to it. Those are the three different hip actions that I see. I'd like to hear some comments and people, a little feedback here. So let me know what you think, and we'll go over. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions because there's so many different thoughts out there about the different ways you're supposed to use the hips and the ground as you swing a golf club. So look forward to hearing from you. Take care. All right, so there you go. Thanks for watching my video. If you have more interest in Miyagi for Golf, it's an online training course where we ship you tools so you can train in the comfort of your own home. The tools will be available later this year. Right now, I'm offering Miyagi for Golf at a discounted rate, so check out miyagiforgolf.com.